neither the formation of their skulls nor their physiognomy, nor their complexion, nor the quality of their hair, nor the general proportions of their frames connect them in any way with the indigenous African races. Oh my gosh! The Berbers and the Negroes. Going to have people coming out going, oh, and try and give us 20, 30 scriptures saying, oh, here's the proof that, this guy was black, that guy was black, God was black, Jesus was black, all this sort of rubbish. Nor, again, is their language in the least like those of the African tribes. We're going to get people coming out going, but you're bringing it from a Eurocentric perspective. No. We're looking at a book of ancient Egypt and the histories from the translations by this guy, Rawlinson, a supposed expert. Again, we stress either he's revealing it's 100% true from those sources, or he's a complete liar. And again, you have to prove that he is, right? Bring the evidence that he is actually lying. Oh, because he's a European or he's a white man or whatever, That's just an excuse. Yeah? You can use that, play that race card, do whatever. But, if you're going to say something, bring the evidence, the facts, the established facts that this guy was racist, lying through his teeth, etc., etc. That's all we're asking. The skull and facial outline, both of the ancient Egyptian and of the modern Copt, that's the probably the Ethiopian, something like that, Coptics. His existing representative are Caucasian, and Egyptian language, while of a peculiar type, has analogies which connect it both with the Semitic that's the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jews, etc., right? But Semite means, you cut it in half, right? Semi, half. Hybrids. Half-breeds, because these people were Arabs in the sense that they wandered the desert regions. They were cattlers, herdlers. They were raisers of stock. Okay? Cattle, sheep, goats, whatever. They lived in tents and they wandered those desert regions. And not in the sense, they were Islamic, Muslim, Mohammedans, all that sort of stuff. That's not it, if you're going to define it properly. Yeah, they were nomads. They were wandering around. Even those Mohammedans, etc., were probably, those kind of peoples we're referring to might have merged with them and become Semite or Semitic. Semites. They became this one massive tribe or 12 tribes or whatever, but they were of the one, right? So they were Semitic. Yeah? They were half-breeds, hybrids, descendants. Yeah, because in your Bible it actually says, you have all these Israelites, meaning in the desert, but they also had Egyptians with them, or non-Jews, Gentiles. So it was commanded to Moses and to the people, well, you can't have these people in your circle if they don't go through this covenant, this rite of circumcision, so they can be grafted into that circle, exclusive circle. That's a sign of covenant between, promise between God and man, and those Israelites. So they had to do the same, or else they couldn't be part of it. So if they didn't, well, off you go. You're not part of our group, our tribe. So toodaloo. Yeah. So it was a command. It was like an order by God through Moses that had to be done. So he went and did it to all his children, grandchildren, whatever, and then these people, these foreigners, right? If they wanted to remain in that circle, become part of that tribe, the house of Israel. So the Egyptian language, while of a peculiar type, has analogies which connect it both with the Semitic and with the Indo-European forms of speech. It's talking about the Indian, the Hindu, and probably the Aryan. I'm not talking about a white supremacist Hitler saluting race, right? Who make out that, they're all that. Yeah. It's those of Europe, let's say Caucasians, because Caucasians were a mixture of people originally, weren't they? They were like Indian, whoever wandered in there, right? Could be white, could be Asian, Yeah. Nor those who were dwelling in geographical location, or Europe, many millennia ago. Immigrants into their own territory, which they entered from the east, and nearly allied to several important races of southwestern Asia, as the Canaanites, the Akkadians or primitive Babylonians, and the southern or Himyaritic Arabs. I don't think that's the Himalayas, but it could be that region, these Himyaritic nomads. It has been maintained by some that the immigration was from the south, the Egyptians having been a colony from Ethiopia which gradually descended the Nile and established itself in the middle and lower portions of the valley. And this theory can plead in its favour both a positive statement of Diodorus, he must be an ancient historian or something, don't know if he's Greek or whatever, and the fact, which is quite certain, of an ethnic connection between the Egyptians and some of the tribes who now occupy Abyssinia, the ancient Ethiopia. But modern research has shown quite unmistakably that the movement of the Egyptians was in the opposite direction. The study of the monuments, says the latest historian of Egypt at that particular time of this being written, right, and published, before it's published, furnishes incontrovertible evidence that the historical series of Egyptian temples, excuse us, Kermit the Frog is trying to get in our throat here and irritate us. Just have a bit of cup of tea there. Okay, so the historical series of Egyptian temples, tombs and cities constructed on either bank of the Nile follow one upon the other in chronological order, in such sort that the monuments of the greatest antiquity, the pyramids, for instance, are situated furthest to the north, while the nearer one approaches the Ethiopian cataracts, the more do the monuments lose the stamp of antiquity, and the more plainly do they show the decline of art, of beauty, and of good taste. Moreover, in Ethiopia itself, the existing remains present us with the style of art that is absolutely devoid of originality. At the first glance, one can easily see that it represents Egyptian art in its degeneracy, and that art ill understood and ill executed. The utmost height to which Ethiopian civilization ever reached was a mere rude imitation, alike in scientific and in art, of Egyptian models. We must look then rather to Syria or Arabia than to Ethiopia. See, you've got to realise these weren't the names of the countries originally, right? They weren't called Syria. They had a different name according to that geographical location, that language that these people spoke, etc. Okay, they had a very different name. This ear on the end here is a N suffix, or if we're wrong, a prefix. Yeah, N suffix. We're pretty sure that's what it is. Okay, and Ethiopia, because these Greeks that went there, right, and then they went back home, they were asked by their peoples, "Oh, where'd you go?" Oh, we went across lands to, we maybe invaded this area, geographical location, and there was a whole lot of these people there, and they spoke this funny language. Okay, and we asked them, where'd you get language from? Where did it originate from? And they said, one of our forefathers was called Aram. Oh, okay. So these Greeks says, well, okay, so you're the possessors of it, you're the ones who own it, are talking it, whatever. So we'll call it Aramaic, because you're the possessors of it, they're the ones who are speaking it, and it came from your forefathers. So you're the possessors, you're the owners. Okay, so then they're living in this geographical location, so they're saying, well, you're the people occupying this land, whether you're the original indigenous or someone that's walked in there, wandered in there over the ages, right? So we all call you Syria, okay? Because you speak this Syrian language or whatever. So we put this ear on the end of it, because you own it, you're the ones who possess it, as you do the land. So you own the land, you possess the land as you do the language. Okay? So that's where it's coming from. It's a Greek Latin loan word. Okay? So originally, Ethiopia was not called that, right? In the African language, would have had something completely different. So these are all names in the Greek. And the end, ik, is a Greek Latin loanword. At the same time, we must admit that they were not mere Syrians or Arabs, but had from the remotest time whereto we can go back to, distinct characteristics whereby they have a good claim to be considered a separate race. What was the origin of these special characteristics cannot indeed be determined until the nature of differences of race is better understood than it is at present. Yeah, 'cause there's so many, like we've come across so many books and we've put up so many videos where, like the last one, these people of Ur of Chaldea, Mesopotamia, Syria, were actually the location is wrong, and they're actually in Ireland. The Egyptians were actually Indians that occupied it before the Nubians, etc., or whoever took over, invaded and conquered them and took over. And these people are these people when they're actually not, all that sort of stuff, right? Okay. So we must look to Syria or Arabia, then to Ethiopia as the cradle of the Egyptian nation. Some of the Egyptian characteristics may be ascribed to these influences. Some may, on the other hand, be confidently attributed to intermixture with African races. So Syrians, Africans, met, intermingled, merged, intermarried, had sons and daughters to these Africans, whatever tribe they were in that era, right? So they had these hybrids, these half-breeds. Okay, so they had... it may be confidently attributed to intermixture with African races from which they were far from holding altogether aloof. Their complexion was probably rendered darker in this way. Their lips were coarsened, and the character of the eye was perhaps modified. So if you have a look at those Egyptian statues, the sculptures, etc., like that, you might see a Biggie Smalls looking guy, or a, what's the other guy's name? Trying to get the Exodus back. Oh my gosh, people back to Egypt. Oh, I've forgotten this damn name. Very, very famous. Those sort of people, right? Marcus Garvey, that's the one. You know, they look like that. And they might have Chinese looking eyes. Or they might be looking like Obama. President Obama, right? There's a couple of statues on YouTube that say, hey, look, he looks like Obama. Oh, look at this one, looks like Michael Jackson, right? They may have similar features, or totally different. They may look like, as on the wall reliefs, like Hindu Indians, or Assyrians, etc., right? Just because they're interbred. They had these descendants that were half-half. A bit like Abraham and Sarai. She couldn't have a baby at the time, so he got with her maidservant, his concubine or whatever she was, Hagar, who was an Egyptian, not a Arab or a wherever they came from originally, not a Muslim or anything like that. And she produced or brought forth a half-breed. So Ishmael was half Chaldean and half Egyptian, according to the scriptures. The Egyptians appear to have been among the darkest races with which the Greeks of the early times came into direct contact. So they would have probably came across some that were really dark, right, and light-skinned. This is probably after these Nubians or whoever they were had risen up, they were slaves or whatever, being beaten by these skinnier, lighter brown types, right? And then invaded and took over and probably ushered them out. Okay, so they being from Africa were darker. Or it could be to do with the sun, it could be anything like that. Yeah, go do your research on it. The Egyptians appear to have been among the darkest races with which the Greeks of the early times came into direct contact. Herodotus calls them blacks. But this is an extreme exaggeration akin to that by which all the native inhabitants of Hindustan have been termed, and he has the N-word there. Okay, so this is where that term probably came from. The Greeks, okay, called them blacks. Okay. But this is an extreme exaggeration akin to that by which all the native inhabitants, or very similar, of Hindustan, which is Indian, Okay, Hindu India have been termed the N-word. The monuments show that the real complexion of the ordinary Egyptian man was, brown with a tinge of red, a hue not very different from that of the Copt as at the present day. Or the Coptic, right? Person. Maybe an Ethiopian. Some sort of Ethiopian. The women were lighter, no doubt, because they were less exposed to the sun. Yeah, they put all that makeup on, they're inside, all that sort of stuff. Doing things and staying pretty. The monuments depict them as yellow, but there can scarcely have been as much difference between the men's colour and the women's as existing paintings represent. They may be hinting to you we were a mixture. Some of the women were Asian looking, or actually Asian. Some of them were dark, some of them were light brown, some of them were darker hue, some of them were black. It could be like that. Yeah. Or maybe they thought, well, every painting that we got here is very, very black, very, very dark, getting kind of boring. So it'll make a lighter brown. Oh yeah, cool. Looks cool. Okay, something different. And then brown gets out of trend. Geez, bored with that. So let's paint it yellow. Whatever is available. The hair was usually black and straight. What? It wasn't woolly? Oh my gosh, it wasn't like a poodle? Oh my gosh. The hair was usually black and straight. In no case was it woolly. In no case was it woolly. Hebrew Israelites, etc. Though sometimes it grew in short, crisp curls. It probably played with it, with a board, whatever. Yeah, sometimes it grew in short, crisp curls. Notice the word sometimes. Men commonly shaved both the hair and the beard. Yeah, because in the hot desert, hair might get some bugs, right? Hell of a lot cooler, hell of a lot cleaner. So they're probably very into their hygiene, right? They shaved both the hair and the beard and went about with their heads perfectly bare, or bald, Kojak, or else wore wigs or a close-fitting cap. Women always wore their own hair and plaited it in long tresses, sometimes reaching to the waist. The hair of the wigs, as also that which is found sometimes growing on the heads of the mummies, is coarse to the eye of a European, but has no resemblance to that of the Negro. Hebrew Israelites, saying, oh yeah, it's Jesus' hair is white and woolly and like a poodle, natty and all this sort of stuff. What do you call that? Nappy, which is actually a derogative term. Kinky and all this sort of stuff, right? Completely wrong. Okay? If this guy is telling the truth, and it's coming from the original ancient records, from the facts left behind, the writings etc. left behind, the facts. So it has no resemblance to that of the Negro. We're not being fascist or racist or anything like that. We're just bringing you the truth. That's what we're about, the ministry of the real truth. Bringing you the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You can say what you want about us, but that's the truth of it. Okay? Because we are light-skinned brown, so why would we want to be racist? That's just totally silly, isn't it? The Egyptians, figure 11, whoever that is, probably further back, had features not altogether unlike those of their neighbours, the Syrians, but with distinguishing peculiarities, slight differences there, right? The forehead was straight but somewhat low. The nose generally long and straight, but sometimes slightly aquiline. So I'm just about to say Wilkinson. What this Rawlinson is doing probably is looking at the wall reliefs, all the records, etc., etc. How they depicted, how they painted their people in their age. He's not going, oh yeah, here's a kid's book, and this is what they might have looked like. And like the ark is a watermelon shape or sushi shape, or this sort of crap, and it's got giraffes and elephants hanging out of it. No, he's looking at the actual art, the literature, the records, etc. Right, to bring the evidence of what it was really like. The forehead was straight, but somewhat low. The nose generally long and straight, but sometimes slightly aquiline. It wasn't a big hooked nose, right? Yeah, but who says that there wasn't a person there with a big hooked nose? The lips were over full. Yeah, big, African people lips. Or other. But the upper lip was short. So they had like a little top lip and a big bottom lip, and the mouth was seldom too wide. The chin was good, being well rounded and neither retreating nor projecting too far. The most marked and peculiar feature was the eye, which was a long narrow slit, like that of the Chinese. Look at the wall reliefs. Statues, but placed horizontally and not obliquely. So it was slanted, but it wasn't like up or down, right? As you have different shades of Asians, right? Japanese, Chinese, etc. An eyebrow also long and thin, but very distinctly penciled, shaded it. So they shaved off their eyebrows, and that's where all you Maori and Pacific Islanders who try to look pretty in your older days, you got the shaved eyebrows, and you got that pencil, black pencil on it, which looks kind of funny, but yeah, you just like doing it. Depends on who's wearing it, right? An eyebrow, also long and thin, but very distinctly penciled, shaded it. The colouring was always dark. The hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, and beard, if any, being black or nearly so, and the eyes black or dark brown. That's the way they painted it, right? In form, the Egyptian resembled the modern Arab. He was tall, his limbs were long and supple, his head was well placed upon his shoulders, his movements were graceful, his carriage dignified, the way he carried himself. In general, however, his frame was too spare, and his hands and feet were unduly large. The women were as thin as the men, and had, there you go, the women were as thin as the men. So, is he talking about a prior peoples before the big, bulky, Shaka most looking Arnold Schwarzenegger type bulky Egyptians, like, you know, what's the name, Michael Jordan, who was a gong banger on announcer on Michael Jackson's Remember the Time, and the other guy that was the actual guard, tiny Lister, right, that size, yeah. In form, the Egyptian resembled the modern Arab. He was tall, his limbs were long and supple, his head was well placed upon his shoulders, his movements were graceful, his carriage dignified, the way he held himself. In general, however, his frame was too spare, and his hands and feet were unduly large. Okay, yeah, that's some of them, right? The women were as thin as the men and had forms nearly similar. Well, they had to be big and bulky. Yeah, warriors, man. Yeah. Children, alpha male sort of thing, yeah? Children, figure 15. However, appear to have been sufficiently plump. Yeah, little short fatties. But they are not often represented or depicted on these wall paintings, reliefs, etc. The most ancient document which has come down to us bearing on the history of Egypt represents the Egyptian people as divided into a number of distinct races. We read of Ludim, Anamim, Libahim, Naftuim, Pathrusim, Kalusim, and Kaptorim. Look at that, it's got im on the end of it. That's Hebrew. As distinct sons of Mizraim. For example, as separate tribes of the powerful people which inhabited the two Egypts. These are the descendants of Noah's sons, probably their descendants, who became the people who occupied the land of Put, Mizraim, later Egypt, and what's the other one? Canaan. It is suggested that the Ludim were the dominant race, or Egyptians proper, prior to them, right? Or maybe saying here the real Egyptians, who were called in Egypt Lut or Rut, example, men par excellence. That the Anamim were the Anu of the monuments who were dispersed widely over the Nile Valley and gave name to On, Heliopolis, and other cities. That the Naftuhim, Hatar, were the domain of Hatar, or people of Memphis. Pathruism, Patorius, the people of the south, or inhabitants of the Thebaid. Etc. But these identifications are all of them more or less uncertain, and it would seem that whatever tribal differences may have existed at the first, they had disappeared, or all but disappeared, by the time that the history of Egypt becomes known to us. Okay? So we've only got this history of what these Pan-Africans, these Egyptian followers, whatever these Egyptologists are telling us. Okay? They're not telling us what went on millenniums before we got that history. Okay, so say we only go back 5,000 years in the history, right? Chronological timetable, whatever, right? Through history, right? We might, some might suggest, well, we can go back further, yeah. But try going back 50 million years or 10,000 years, 20,000 years further, right? You may not have the history for that. Yeah. So if you find little bits of fragments and all that sort of stuff, you experts, theologists, scholars, whatever, it's just small bits of fragment, right? You haven't got the complete picture. So you can sit there and go, oh, well, we think, we believe, we've got an idea. You're not saying that you know. Okay? You're assuming, aren't you? From those little pieces of fragment that you've got. But these identifications are, all of them, more or less uncertain, and it would seem that whatever tribal differences may have existed, at the first they had disappeared, all but disappeared by the time that the history of Egypt becomes known to us today, right? From this guy's days to us. The only real distinction that remained was one between the people of the South Country and those of the North, who had their respective peculiarities and even spoke dialects that were somewhat different from the Egyptian. Okay? Otherwise, the various Egyptian tribes had been fused together and moulded into one compact and homogeneous people. So the whole mixture of different peoples, probably Phoenicians, Arameans, Syrians, Israelites, Hittites, whoever, right? They came in there, or the slaves or whatever. Otherwise, the various Egyptian tribes had been fused together and moulded into one compact and homogeneous people before the time when history first takes cognizance of them, before we even had any idea. Right? This is centuries and centuries. Centuries after centuries after centuries later. Intellectually, the Egyptians must take rank among the foremost nations of remote antiquity, but cannot compare with the great European races whose rise was later, the Greeks and Romans. Their minds possessed much subtlety and acuteness. They were fond of composition, making songs, singing songs, instruments and all that sort of stuff, playing the guitar and all that sort of stuff, and made considerable advances in many of these sciences. They were intelligent, ingenious, speculative. It is astonishing what an extensive literature they possessed at a very early date. Books on religion, on morals, laws, rhetoric, arithmetic, mensuration, or the menses, geometry, medicine, books of travels, and above all, novels. But the merit of the works is slight. You've only got a little bit of that, right? There's probably much, much, much more that we don't know about, right? We haven't got. The novels are vapid, the medical treatises interlarded with charms and exorcisms, the travels devoid of interest, the general style of all the books forced and stilted. Egypt may in some particulars have stimulated Greek thought, directing it into new lines and giving it a basis to work upon. But otherwise, it cannot be said that the world owes much of its intellectual progress to this people. Yeah. So all this plagiarism claims, all this sort of stuff, yeah, may be true in part, but you can't blame it all to say, oh yeah, everyone took everything from us alone. Yeah. Yeah. We were the chosen ones and everyone took everything from us. Yeah, we were the ones, right? You can't really say that. Egypt may in some particulars have stimulated Greek thought, directing it into new lines and giving it a basis to work upon. It's a foundation to work upon. But otherwise, it cannot be said that the world owes much of its intellectual progress to this people. The advancements through time, about whose literary productions there's always something that is weak and childish, maybe mythical, etc. In art, the power which the Egyptians exhibited was doubtless greater. Yeah, brilliant. We'll give that a tick. Their architecture was on the grander scale, another tick, and dwarfs the Greek in comparison. Yeah, the Greeks couldn't match it. Did they build pyramids? Did they do this? Did they do that? Did they have the mummifications, all that sort of stuff? No. But even here it is to be noted that the higher qualities of art were wanting. Probably slight improvement or something like that, compared to these medieval arts, the Greek art and all that sort of stuff, right? There is no beauty of proportion. On the contrary, the gigantic columns are clumsy from their undue massiveness and are far too thickly crowded together. They are rather rounded piers in pillars, and the capitals are coarse and heavy. The coloured ornamentation used was over glaring. The forms of the ornamentation was almost always stiff and sometimes absolutely hideous. In mimetic art, the Egyptians might perhaps have done better had they been at liberty to allow their natural powers free scope. But they worked in shackles. A dull, dead conventionalism bore sway over the land. Okay. Yeah, probably the Greeks took their ideas and made them better, right? As people do, right? Like the Americans. They take from the Chinese, the Asians, their computers, right? Some of them from their lot in the garage, started off these computers, Steve Jobs and the other guy, whatever. And then the Asians, basically over the century, have improved on it. Yeah? They made it better. Yeah? Etc., etc. Like, there's those sex robots that are out, the AI robots, all that sort of stuff. America may make it really great, make the great ones, but these Chinese, who are very creative, etc., very technical, may make it even better. It doesn't really look like it at the moment, but it's just an example, possibility. Okay, so they worked in shackles. A dull, dead conventionalism bore sway over the land, and though some exceptions occur, Egyptians' mimetic art is in the main a reproduction of the same unvarying forms without freedom of design or vigour of treatment. And don't forget, that's according to this guy, this Egyptologist Rawlinson, not us. Keep that in mind. In morals, the Egyptians combined an extraordinary degree of theoretic perfection with an exceedingly lax and imperfect practice. It has been said that the 42 laws of the Egyptian religion, Ma'at, contained in the 125th chapter of the Book of the Dead, fall short in nothing of the teaching of Christianity, and conjectured that Moses, in compiling his code of laws, did but translate into Hebrew the religious precepts which he found in the sacred books of the people among whom he had been brought up. Okay. Yeah, he was brought up in the Egyptian courts by the Egyptians, so he knew their culture, their religion, their language, how to write, all this sort of stuff, right, as a young lad. Then he breaks away, and all of that's in the back of his mind, his subconscious, right? So he frees his people, and they go out into the desert, and he says, right, you've got to have some rules. God said here's some rules, right? But God gives them more, less condensed rules, right? 10 commandments, okay? Plus those 613 Levitical laws of the priesthood, all that sort of stuff, right? Okay. Whereas what we found through our research is that they were very similar to the king of Shurapak's laws, or Shurapak, the city of Shurapak, right, which was in Syria. Okay, and perhaps the Hammurabi laws, which probably may have come after that. We have to go do our research on that. For his people, may have been influenced by those, either. But they're very, very similar. The 10 Commandments, the 613 Levitical laws, with the laws of Shurappak, the king of Syria once upon a time. Okay? The laws that he decreed, and they all wrote down. And you've got to remember that Moses didn't write down all those things. He probably got someone else to do it for him. He could have been illiterate. He might not have been. Right? But apparently, even the Jews, today's Jews, will admit, no, he didn't write those. Okay, we'll admit it. But we attribute to them, like Christians say, the 5 books of the law or instruction or Torah were attributed to Moses, right? He didn't actually write them down. So these Jews basically have admitted, apparently, yeah, that's right. But because it's our custom, our tradition, we have to put a name to the scrolls. We attributed them to Moses. Could have been his brother Aaron, could have wrote it down. Could have been someone later on, right? That was well versed in those scriptures, commandments, and Levitical laws. Okay, that's why these Jews, these Israelites, these Pharisees, rather, in Israel, in Jerusalem, in the temples and that, had the Mosaic law. Obviously somebody wrote it down and they passed it on. Okay? It might have been a guy that was selected as the writer of it, write it all down. As I say it, as I bellow it, says Moses, write it down. Right? Okay, God just said, do this. You got to wear tassels on the end of your shoes or your sandals or something. Yeah, write that down. Yeah. Okay, now it's telling me you can't look at me when I climb up the ladder because I'm not wearing any loincloth underneath or something like that. It's just what we come across as well. Don't do that, right? Yeah. You have to get your skin cut, right, and then we'll party, right? Well, that sort of stuff. Okay? Well, that sort of thing. Okay. So we're going to leave that there because we really need to go to the bathroom and maybe have something to eat. But we hope that you really enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a like. And we hope immensely that it's opened your eyes to the truth in regards to the ancient Egyptian or Hamite civilization, the customs, the agriculture, etc., that we've covered. If you like it, give us a like, and then subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to do that; it's very important. Tell us how much you enjoyed it, and give us your feedback, and then go share this with all your family, friends, and others, whether they be Christian, Judaic, Muslim, or Hebrew Israelite, or whoever, right? To make them wake up and realise, hey man, somebody's giving you all this information which is incorrect. Okay? They're getting it all from, obviously, a European source, like this Reggie guy said on Sarneta TV, the live debate. They should really get it from the ancients. If they left something behind, and you can translate it into nearest English, etc., well then get that, but provide your sources, your links, as backup, as proof, right? Don't just go, the Egyptians did this and said that. And someone asks you, well, where's the proof that they had that sort of mindset? And you can't back it up. It's just hearsay, right? It's a false claim. You got no backup. You got no source, links, right? It's easy. There's a lot of people spout a lot of crap off the top of their head. They might have heard it in their church, or their friends might have told them or suggested or something like that, right? And they just become, or they might have even read it, right? Without really doing extensive research on who that source was, whether it was a scholar, theologian, expert, whatever. Okay? And they're just parrots. They're trained parrots. Yeah? To parrot it to somebody else and say, oh, did you know? And then they got upset because somebody, like, say, Jabari on Sarneta Live TV, or Reggie, or Shaka Almost, says, no, you haven't studied it enough. Where's your sources? I brought you the sources here. You have brought nothing. So your claims, unbacked, are worthless. Okay? It's just a whole lot of wasted air coming out of your mouth. Okay, so we're going to leave it there. Give us a like, subscribe, add your comments, and then we'll get back to you on those. And then go share this video with all your family, friends, and others.